The words didn't land like a bomb, they settled quietly, like dust on a forgotten shelf. We're restructuring to maximize shareholder value, Brandon announced in our brief meeting. Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately. Just like that, no ceremony, no handshake, no thank you for 14 years. My name is Clayton, and for more than a decade I built the Eastern Division of Northrise Apparel from the ground up. Not with flashy PowerPoints or the latest management jargon, but with trust, consistency, and hard work. The kind of work no spreadsheet could measure. I personally handled our top accounts, Suncoast, Financial, and Vector Properties. I knew their quirks, their pain points, their families. I'd been to their weddings. I'd sent flowers to their funerals. Those relationships brought in $4.2 million in annual contracts, and yet, here I was being escorted out of my office by security. Brandon, our new CEO, had been with the company for exactly 8 weeks. Harvard Business School, buzz cut, tailored suits. He never once asked how we'd grown 18% year over year while other divisions flatlined. Never once asked why our biggest clients requested me by name on every quarterly call. When I passed Alicia from HR on my way out, she couldn't meet my eyes. She'd been with Northrise for 15 years, longer than I had. Thomas, the CFO, walked past, then stopped. Clayton. He began, but the words died in his throat. He just gave me a half-hearted pat on the shoulder before continuing down the hall. I packed my office quietly, a fishing trophy from Vector's company, retreat family photos, a thank you note from Diane. At Suncoast, 14 years reduced to a single cardboard box. I nodded to security on my way out. No drama, no shouting. Just silence as I drove away. The glass tower I helped fill with contracts, teams, and trust shrank in my rearview mirror. For the first time in over a decade, I didn't feel the weight of 30 employees on my back. I should have felt free, but instead, I felt hollow. Back to the beginning when I started at Northrise. We were renting space in an old warehouse in Charlotte. The Eastern Division was bleeding money. I had 9 employees, no systems, and a mandate. Fix it, or we shut it down. So, I drove every prospect within 100 miles. I learned everything: late shipments, poor sizing, quality issues. Then I fixed all of it. We grew 0.15 employees, then 25. Then a new office. I promoted Janice from customer service when I saw how she soothed even our angriest clients. I hired Keith, fresh out of design school, after he showed me mock-ups that solved problems even we didn't know existed. My son, Dylan, was just 12 when I started. He's 26, now an architect in Seattle. My wife Jennifer supported every late night, every weekend call, every emergency flight. It's about building something that will last. I'd tell her. She always believed me. The cracks begin. 2 show 3 CEOs came and went. They all valued what I'd built. Northrise went from a regional supplier to a national competitor, and the Eastern Division led the charge. But when Kestrel Group bought us out, everything changed. They installed their own board and brought in Brandon Kerr. He came with efficiency consultants and spreadsheets measuring everything, except what mattered. They never asked about the trust that took years to build. They never asked how. I kept clients happy without discounts. They didn't care that I attended a client's father's funeral or did 2 a.m. inspections to meet rollout deadlines 2 weeks before I was let go. Brandon asked for a full report on our key accounts. I delivered everything: contract values, renewals, growth opportunities. But you know what I didn't include? The midnight calls I took when a shipment was late, the handwritten notes of appreciation, the birthdays I never missed. How do you list loyalty on a spreadsheet? When I got the meeting invite and saw it was just 10 minutes, I knew I'd seen it happen to others. I just never thought it would happen to me. The morning after, the next morning, I sat in my home office staring at my phone. Nothing, no calls, no emails, no acknowledgement. Jennifer brought me coffee. She squeezed my shoulder. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "They don't understand what they've done." I replied. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. What I felt was clarity. I opened my personal laptop. Not the company system, my own records. 14 years of real relationships. Names, numbers, emails, histories. The first call at 9:30 a.m. My phone rang. Diane, from Suncoast, Clayton. "We just got a mass email about changes at Northrise. Please tell me you're not affected." I hesitated. I was let go yesterday. Silence. Who's taking over the accounts? They didn't say. I assume someone from Brandon's team. Another pause. "We have a renewal in 6 weeks. Need to be honest, the board only renewed last time because of you. The pricing was higher, but you always delivered." She tapped her pen against her desk. I remembered that habit. "Can I call you back on this number?" "Of course." As I hung up, Jennifer looked at me from the kitchen. "You okay?" "I think I will be." My phone buzzed again. Keith, my lead designer. "Brandon just asked for contact info for your accounts. No one's giving him answers. What's going on?" I didn't reply. Later that day, the calls came flooding. Invector Properties, Eastern Bank, Bright Healthcare, Shock, Concern. Questions. I answered them all honestly. I didn't solicit business. I just told the truth. A new spreadsheet that night. I opened a new spreadsheet. Not of accounts, not of quotas, but of possibilities. Old competitors that had once courted me, contacts who respected my work, maybe even the idea of starting my own consulting firm for 14 years. I had built bridges for Northrise. Now I had to decide whether to burn them or build new ones for myself. Part 1, complete, approximately equals 1100 words. Let me know when you're ready for part 2. Just say, "Next," and I'll continue the story from here. You said, part 2, ChatGPT said, "Absolutely." Here's part 2 of your 4,000-word video script. Continuing with the same cinematic tone and emotional pacing. This section expands on Clayton's evolving relationships, strategic decisions, and the quiet power of integrity over spreadsheets. Redemption beyond the glass tower, part 2. The ripple effect. By that evening, I had 5 missed calls. From Brandon Kerr. I didn't answer a single one. I didn't need to. The damage was already rippling through the system he thought he controlled. The truth speaks for itself. Every conversation that day followed the same pattern: shock, frustration, loyalty. To Northrise, but to me, you always answered the phone even on weekends. You showed up in person when other reps sent emails. We trusted you, Clayton, not the company. By dinner, my head was spinning, not from fear, but from possibility. I hadn't made a single call to poach anyone. They were coming to me because trust isn't a transaction. It's a track record. Brandon's panic sets in the next morning. Brandon's calls changed tone. Voicemail after voicemail. "Clayton, we need to talk. There's been some confusion with a few accounts. We might have acted too quickly with restructuring. I didn't call back. That afternoon, I met Jerry Campbell, the former Northrise CFO, for coffee. He'd been quietly let go during the Kestrel acquisition, same as me. He sipped his drink and leaned in. Brandon's in full panic mode. Word is both Suncoast and Vector have sent formal letters saying they won't renew. The board's freaking out. Did they say why? Loss of relationship, personnel, leadership, instability. Corporate speak for. We only trusted Clayton. A strange calm settled over me. Not satisfaction, not revenge, validation. But then Jerry added something that hit differently. Brandon's telling the board, "You're sabotaging the company, calling clients and convincing them to leave." I stiffened. That's a lie. I've taken their calls, answered honestly. That's it. Doesn't matter. He's building a case as you violated your termination agreement. Might even try to claw back your severance. That night, I got an email from Northrise Legal, a cease and desist, thinly veiled legal threats, accusing me of interfering with company relationships. No mention of facts, just intimidation. I forwarded it to Paul Henderson, my lawyer friend. No panic, just preparation. Law meets loyalty. The next morning, Paul called. "Clayton, they've got nothing. I reviewed your contract. No non-solicitation clause. The non-compete is 6 months. Standard, but it only prevents you from joining specific competitors and client relationships. Totally fair game. You didn't steal trade secrets. You didn't pressure anyone. In fact, we could counter for wrongful termination. You were a senior exec terminated with no transition plan, no documentation. For 14 years, I'd served the company with loyalty. Now, I realized they hadn't earned it. The smoking gun. Later that day, an email arrived from Janice, my former colleague. Subject, "You should know this." She'd attached an internal slide deck, a restructuring plan Brandon had presented 2 weeks before my termination. The title, "Transitioning to a System-Dependent Model." On slide 12, I saw it. Higher risk dependency on legacy relationship-based model. Eliminate senior personnel. To reduce costs. Replace with junior hires. Raise prices by 15% on legacy clients. They hadn't fired me because I was underperforming. They fired me because I was succeeding in a way they couldn't control. More damning, a termination roadmap. Keith, Janice. 3 others from my team marked for reduction once I was gone. Jennifer. Read over my shoulder in silence. "They were planning to dismantle everything you built," she said quietly, "and blamed the fallout on me." I printed the slides and added them to my growing file of evidence. The counteroffer that afternoon. Daniel Thompson, CEO of Summit Ridge Outfitters, called. A smaller competitor. He'd tried to recruit me twice before. "I heard what happened at Northrise," he said. "Their loss. My offer still stands, only this time I'm adding equity and complete control over your client relationships." I told him I'd consider it, but with a condition. I want to bring my core team. 5 people total. "Done," he replied without hesitation. "Offer letters by end of day." The tipping point that night, I called Keith, then Janice, then the others. I told them about the offer, about the restructuring, about how they'd been targeted next. Each said yes without hesitation. We weren't just leaving, we were liberating ourselves. The foundations of a new future. I didn't call clients. I didn't send a single proposal. Instead, I met Diane from Suncoast for lunch. we're not renewing with Northrise," she said before we even sat down. "The question is where we go next." "I can't solicit your business," I explained. "Legally, I need to be careful." She smiled. "Understood. But, hypothetically, if you were working somewhere similar, we'd be very interested." By week's end, I had quiet lunch meetings or calls with every major client. All said the same thing. No trust, no loyalty, no Brandon. Not one of them had been contacted by Northrise since my termination. Meanwhile, Summit Ridge issued official offer letters to my team. One by one, we handed in our resignations. Uninvited visitor, the following Monday. Brandon pulled into my driveway. Mercedes, designer shoes. Fake confidence. I was in the garage, working on my old Chevy. "Clayton, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Key team members are resigning. Clients are threatening to walk." I didn't look up from my engine. "Sounds tough. Look, maybe we move too fast. Whatever Summit Ridge is offering, we'll beat it. Name your price." I wiped my hands on a rag. "It's not about the money. It never was." "Then what? What do you want?" I looked him in the eye. I wanted respect for 14 years of building something valuable. I wanted a conversation, not a 10-minute dismissal. I wanted my team protected, not targeted. His face changed. He knew. He knew I'd seen the presentation, the plan, the betrayal. "That was just a draft," he said. "Scenario planning. Goodbye, Brandon." As I walked past him toward my house, he called out, "The board will sue you, Summit Ridge. Everyone." I turned one last time. "Go ahead, but ask yourself this: what costs more, letting me walk away, or explaining to shareholders why all your clients and top talent vanished overnight?" He didn't answer. He sees OULDN. Single quote, T. 1 week later. I walked into the Summit Ridge offices not as a recruit, but as a leader with his entire team intact. The same faces that had once filled the halls of Northrise's Eastern Division now gathered around a new conference table, but this time there was clarity, freedom, and purpose. We weren't just starting over, we were starting better. Keith was sketching a new product line by the third day. Janice had already launched a complete customer feedback system. The rest of the team got to work on revamping work, improving delivery models, and contacting vendors we trusted. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving together. The client's followers, my non-compete expired 2 weeks later. Conversations that had once been hypothetical became real. Suncoast Financial was first. Diane signed the paperwork in a quiet boardroom over coffee. "We're back where we belong," she said simply. Then came Vector Properties, then Eastern Bank, then Bright Healthcare, then Dalton Logistics, one by one. 5 of Northrise's most lucrative contracts were transferred to Summit Ridge within a month. I didn't pitch them, I didn't push. They came because of the relationships we'd built. By brick, handshake by handshake, Northrise unravels while we were onboarding clients. Northrise was imploding. From my quiet new office, I watched headlines roll in. Northrise Apparel misses revenue targets by 18%. Key executive resignations. Raise leadership concerns. Client attrition linked to restructuring fallout. And then, the breaking news. Brandon Kerr steps down as CEO. The same board that had once cheered his spreadsheets was now issuing statements about strategic realignments and unforeseen losses. I didn't feel joy, just confirmation. They had gambled on efficiency over relationships and lost. "The offer you can refuse," Few days later, I got a LinkedIn message from Thomas, Northrise's CFO. The board is meeting to discuss recovery. Your name came up. Would you consider a conversation? I didn't reply. The next week, a formal email from Eleanor Barnes, board chair. We made a grave error in judgment. Would you consider returning as CEO? Complete autonomy, equity, board seat. Name your terms. I closed my laptop. No need to respond, because we were building something better. The buyout twist 3 days later. The headlines hit. Summit Ridge Outfitters acquires Eastern Division of Northrise Apparel. The very branch I had built from scratch. The clients I'd brought in. The team I had developed now. Ours againly stronger. Daniel had negotiated the deal quietly. Behind closed doors. Paid pennies on the dollar for what was once golden goose. They had no choice. Either sell to us or watch it collapse. Brick by brick, 1 year after my firing. I drove past the old office. The Summit Ridge logo now stood proudly where Northrises once did. I parked across the street, watching the employees step out for the day. Familiar faces, new energy, a future rebuilt. When I got home, Jennifer was cooking dinner. Closure or nostalgia? She asked. Closure, I said. That night, Dylan called from Seattle. His firm had just landed a huge design project. How's the new job going, Dad? Good. I'm building something that will last. The same words I used to say about Northrise X at this time. I knew it was true. The final move, the next morning, I got a call from Jerry Campbell. You'll want to hear this. Gravora Group just acquired the rest of Northrise. A clean sweep. Nothing left of the original company. I looked out my window, the morning sun warming the deck. No anger, no regret, just peace. Real leadership later that day. I called a company meeting. Daniel had just approved a profit-sharing plan, an employee ownership model. Janice and Keith would lead implementation. We weren't just building revenue, we were building ownership, trust, legacy. You know, Daniel said to me later, when we hired you, we thought we were getting a good executive and some client contacts, but what we actually got was a completely new way of doing business. Relationships over transactions, I replied. Always. A full year had passed since the day security walked me out of Northrise's glass tower. 12 months since. I fit 14 years of my life into a cardboard box. A year since Brandon Kerr had looked me in the eye and told me my position was being eliminated. Now, I stood in my new office at Summit Ridge, a quiet space filled with light, movement, and meaning. The fishing trophy from Vector Properties sat proudly on my shelf. Alongside new photos, our first team retreat, Janice presenting to a packed client conference, Keith shaking hands with a major partner after unveiling our new product. Line no bitterness, just pride. Results that speak for themselves. Our quarterly projections came in 30% above target. Client retention, 97%, the highest in Summit Ridge history. But even better than numbers was what those numbers represented: stability, loyalty, growth built on trust, not transactions. Brandon had once tried to make my contributions fit into a spreadsheet. Now, that spreadsheet didn't exist anymore because we'd rewritten the rules. A foundation of ownership. Daniel knocked on my door later that day. Board just approved your proposal, he said. Employee ownership program starts next quarter. Janice and Keith would head up the implementation. Every employee would have a real stake in the company's success, not just bonuses, equity, accountability, pride. It wasn't just about sharing profits, it was about sharing the vision. The message from the market that evening. I received a news alert on my phone. Northrise Apparel's remaining divisions acquired by Gravora Group. Just like that, the company I had once helped turn into a national leader was gone, dismantled, absorbed. Nothing left of the original team. Nothing left of the culture we'd built. Jerry texted a few minutes later. They're trying to reach out through back channels. Board thinks you're the only one who saved it. I didn't reply. Family. Finally, that weekend, Dylan flew in from Seattle. We sat on the back deck. A quiet sunset filling the sky. You seem lighter, Dad, he said. I am, I replied. For the first time in years, I'm not carrying a company that doesn't value its people. We talked about his architectural projects, his dreams. I told him the same thing I used to tell Jennifer. When I worked those long nights, it's about building something that lasts. Except now, I wasn't just saying it, I was living it. The final tester, few days later, Eleanor Barnes, former board chair of North. A last email. Clayton, we were wrong. Would you consider returning as CEO of the merged divisions? Under Gravora's ownership. Name your conditions. Equity, board seat, full control. For a moment, I paused. Not because I was tempted, but because I realized something important. I didn't need the validation. I had already won, without threats, without revenge. Just relationships, resilience, and results. I wrote back simply, "Thank you for the offer. I must respectfully decline. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Full circle, the 1-year anniversary of Summit Ridge's acquisition of the Eastern Division. We held a small event in our newly renovated office. Former Northrise employees now wore Summit Ridge badges. Clients stopped by to shake hands and share stories. We laughed about old memories and toasted to new milestones. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't corporate, but it was real. Reflections. I thought of Brandon for a moment, where he was, what he'd learned. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But I realized I didn't need to know, because here's what mattered. I didn't just outlast him, I outgrew him. Leadership isn't about titles or suits or spreadsheets. It's about trust, consistency, and doing the right thing when no one's watching. The legacy that night. I stood once more in my quiet office. The sun slipping behind the trees. I looked at the team photos, the client notes, the small trophy that once symbolized the start of everything. Then I picked up a marker, walked to the whiteboard, and wrote 3 simple words: build with integrity. Because, in the end, that's what lasts.